So if you don't want your name or your face and your voice recorded and published to YouTube, now's the time to mute and turn off your video. Otherwise, we'll continue.
I'm okay.
Okay. So before I usually try to give the presenter a chance to introduce themselves and talk about whatever they feel is important. But I did want to comment that I've known Jack since at least 2009. I can't remember when I first arrived in Portland, but I moved down there for a job and attended the local Access user group where Jack was the president.
Back when it actually had attendees?
Yeah, and those were wonderful meetings because there were always interesting topics, and Jack did a great.
People.
We had dozens of people when I was attending. It was already starting to fall off a bit, but I was always impressed by the way he managed to provide interesting topics, but also kept things moving smoothly. And so I appreciate it. And I also appreciated attending the POG conferences up at Silver Falls. I don't know if we'll ever see that again, but
not unless they change management.
Yeah.
It's pretty much a B&B is about all it is now. If you were to stay overnight and want to have a outside vendor do food for you for lunch and evening meals, they actually have to bring it. They're not even allowing an outside vendor to use the kitchen.
Wow.
Well, that's so. Well, yeah, I guess that's the end of that. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, we'll keep our ears open. And hopefully, something will happen soon. So, on that note, I'll just turn the time over to Jack, and away we go.
All right. Well, it's good to see you. I got started, finding, Mike Wolf. I was one of the guys that volunteered, suggested that he needed to be an MVP because I came across his website, the nolongerset.com, and I went, wow, look at all the articles he's writing, because he was literally writing an article every day. And when you look at their list, there are just so many articles, it's amazing. Okay. He's slacking off a little bit. He's got his 1 day a week when he does his VB6 replacement okay, that's nice. But this one article he did about abbreviations and lookup tables really kind of hit a interesting spot to me. Because when you really have things like industries, that you have a whole lot of companies that might be associated with a given industry, you'd really like to be able to filter some way to be able to do that. And filtering on a great big long word, such as, petroleum refining or insurance, property and casualties and stocks. It's like, really? This is what we're filtering on? Okay. It really leads itself to, well, there must be something easier. And that's where he started off talking about having a lookup table where, yes, you had values that you were associating with these, but they were being reduced down to a few characters. Okay. And it was interesting. The idea of it being, 2 to 5 character abbreviations, such that a given company that's using something like this, you would definitely learn what these codes were. So it'd be a fast way of getting somewhere. Okay. And so that was his first article about it. Now, if I can get to the other screen. That's when he then talked about, well, how would you generate those codes? Okay. And when he did it, it's like, okay, this is nice. But then as an Access user, I was blown away that he did it as a stored procedure. Over on the SQL Server. And it's like, well, that's just fine. Okay. But what if I don't have a SQL Server to start with? I still might want to do something like this. So then I started looking at what was these rules that he was trying to come up with. This idea of using the first letter of each word. If the word and is within the group of words that makes up a given grouping, we're going to put an and sign in it instead. But then we don't want to end with an and sign, what do we do if there's only one word, you know? And so he had all these nice little rules. And I go, well, that's really nice. You know, and he showed what it might look like if you were doing 2-character code versus a 3-character, a 4-character, a 5, or even a 6, and what you might start seeing, you know. 2 characters, so I used the first 2 words. 3 characters, he used first character of all 3, okay? But, you know, here we are. These are all starting to be the same, but here's chemicals, single word. He went all the way out taking that many characters of that word. So it really was some, to me, very straightforward string handling things that he was doing. And I really thought it was great. So it's like, hold it. Why don't I take and do that over in Access so as I could use it? Okay. And so this is, and he did, by the way, provide a link to a table that had all these companies in a CSV file. Let's see. Yeah, here's the base data where we have companies and then what's their industry in and so forth. You know, so it was a nice set of data to represent what he was talking about. Okay. And therefore, that's where I then come up with my little routine for handling this, that it does, and it produces the same results that he came up with. Okay. And I looked at what he got for different examples, and I go, yep, it looks like I'm following all his rules. Okay. I think I may even come up with an extra one. Okay. But, you know, doing a codify of 5 characters, I start finding with our base data that, you know, here's 2 codes of 5 characters that each have 12 different companies that they represent. Okay. And that can be seen over here on my actual search form, that here's that drop down list of all those codified codes. And if I pick, oh, computer software, there's all the companies that are computer software companies, or food consumer products. You know, and this is what I was going, that it just makes sense to a user interface to make it easy. Now, this was me playing around, by the way, with the idea of a split form and having search capability up in my header, because that's what this is up here. Because I was also playing around with just exactly how does filtering work on a form. Because, hey, can't I go in here and do things like highlight a word and right click on it and says contains food? Look at that. So now I've got it showing on the form that yes, I am indeed filtering on 2 things. Okay. But that was the neat part of working through this, was just trying to figure out how you might do it. Okay. Now, again, the actual code, where's my screen? Over here, where I come up, first of all, with what his rules are. Okay. And giving Mike credit for what he had done. All right. But then turn it into an actual access function as to how does it work with, you know, do we only want alpha characters? So as if there's numbers in a given word you're codifying, do we want to allow that? Do we want, let's see, I think I did, oh yeah. Do you want it to always be uppercased? Okay, because you can have words that in a grouping that aren't capitalized, okay, just because it wasn't done that way. But that's what I ended up doing. And each one of the rules has their own little bitty piece that it walks through as to what are we going to do. You know, things like, hey, if I find the word and, you know, I'm going to change that to the ampersand, okay? And yes, it was all done with an array. You know, I've never been a real fan of arrays, but there really are times that an array is just the way to handle data. And so that's the way this worked, is I put it all into an array, start walking through them, then start outputting what's the code that's going to be for that given value that we want, setting the length that we want it to be, you know, whether it's a 1 character, 2 characters, 3 characters, and so forth. You know, and I didn't see myself a real reason to go past 5 characters. So I did stop as my last case at 5 characters. But it is really, you can easily walk through this and be able to, I'm hoping, up it to 6 characters if you wanted, okay? But they all just follow the same rules, okay? And as you can see, what's interesting, the way the rules work, the first case is just doing one thing. Well, the second thing will be do that one and one more. So notice the went from 1 rule to 2 rules here. To 3 characters went from 1 rule to an extra 1. 4 went to an extra 1. And 5 finally gets the last. Okay. And I'll definitely make this file available to anybody because it's just easy to work with. Okay. As you can see, I even had a routine in here as to what characters we're going to allow. I am not doing this as a see what's our character set that has the extra characters in it, the umlauts and all that. Term's not coming to me at the moment. I'm just doing straight ASCII characters. Okay, but you could update it that way if you want it. But that was all that was to it. Any questions? And this, by the way, was something I really thought was cool that I also stole from Mike, is his idea of being able to test code. And he has a module called doc tests that if you take and put together any sample test you want to run with it, starting with 3 greater than symbols that's been commented out, it will then take and run that code that you've got right here, that function, with whatever's being set here as the value to send into it, and then we'll return what that function would do. So just for an example, let's see what happens. Okay, so this is done. Let's see. Sample usage, run all tests. So it's this module, and here's the function. And I can't see my keyboard. I'm going to turn the light on just a second. So I can do Control C. And I want to run, what's going on here? I want to run that function, and I want it to, you can specify all modules in your system, and it will walk through them all by not specifying what module it is you want to test. In this case, I only want to test this one module, okay? Because I want it to run all these tests. So when I run it, it just went through and ran 9 tests, and they all tested true. If you think that wasn't actually happening, watch. I'll go in and change a value on one of the tests such that this now is not, let's see. What would I want to do here? Now let's change this letter, okay? Because it wants to return a P. So now when I run this test, it comes back and it says, look at that. This test with this as the test string that was sent to it was expected to evaluate as this, which is what I had set right here, but it returned this instead. So that's another little thing you may find very useful. Because if you're not testing your code, we know we can all get in trouble, especially if we haven't run it in a while, okay? Now, the other thing that I wanted to show as a quick and simple thing, we've got a few minutes left, is that I've had this function for generating GUIDs, okay? And what this function's about is that if I send something to it, it will generate a GUID, 32-character string, okay? So it actually uses the string or the co-create GUID function and will automatically make a string for you. Now, I used this when I was taking with the POG database. I had a database that I would talk to a SQL server with it, or I had a local database, such that I didn't have to have an internet connection to be able to still use my app and get everybody's name. So what I did was the true key to the table in both on the server and locally was a string GUID. So I added one more column to all of my tables so as that I would have that ability to do append queries and update queries whenever I when I had the ability to see local data and internet data. So as I could actually do synchronization between those databases. I also added fields for who it was that actually modified that data or added it, so as I could have multiple desktops that all could sync, and so I could walk to any of my computers that I had the front end to, or my person who did the books, he had the ability to run it as well, to be able to sync his data back and forth. Because having a GUID is what it's all about. Now, I would still have an auto number on the SQL Server, so SQL Server was happy, and an auto number in the Access version of the table, such that Access was happy. But the true key that everything linked up to is with the 32 GUID. Questions?
So how did you actually do the syncing then? Was it update queries or?
Yes.
Yeah.
But let me see if I've actually got that on my machine. It would be here. No, doesn't look, well, maybe that's here. We'll see if this one works. I haven't run this in a while. This is where right now it wants to talk to the SQL server, the MySQL server that was out there that doesn't exist anymore. And therefore, I have a routine. Let's see. Yeah, this one isn't, this isn't the one that had the front end or back end. I'm sorry, I don't have that. Maybe this one? Available connections, procedure maintenance. Yeah. No, it looks like it's something we'll do on a future meeting. I might be able to show you as how I was doing it. But ultimately, any of the tables I ultimately had two tables, a local version of a table and the server version. And it would have an extra column in here that was the 32-bit GUID. And that's how I linked everything. I didn't link on the front end IDs.
Cool.
So I'm maybe a little bit lost, but let me see if I can interpret what I think you're saying is that you're running a database on multiple machines, so you can't rely on each of them creating a unique number. So you take that over and create a GUID, which is guaranteed to be unique?
Yes. Yeah, that function, I wanted that up. This function right here, co-create GUID,
Right.
is available, has been available since Windows 3.5 or something.
Okay.
And it's available on SQL Server as well to be able to generate GUIDs. Okay. And all I'm doing in my generating those GUID is I get one and then I go through and I remove the normal curly cues that's on the ends and the dashes that are in the middle.
Right.
Okay. Because
so if you run that function again, that make ID 1, you're going to get the same number again. Is that correct? Same GUID again?
okay. Now, the only reason that is doing that is because I actually have a table called ZMake IDs. And I write into that table when you pass in something like that, there's that value. So as it always looks, the way this function works, it always looks to see what this is.
If it exists there, it doesn't make a new one. It just reuses.
Reuses it. Okay. And I got this back when I was working for another company that we were doing data synchronization. And we were always having to import in data into our app from people's other apps.
Right.
And when you're doing data migrations, you need to be able to repeat the process multiple times.
Yeah.
Okay. And so by having the ability to repeat and get the same key every time you run your process, because if I go back over there,
if you run it with 2, you'll get you get a new record in the table.
It doesn't matter what we pass it. It just generated a GUID. And in my table, I've got a new value.
Well,
okay. Can be useful.
Yes.
And I have it set up to be just a short text field. Therefore, we're maxing out at 255 characters. For most everybody, that should be long enough.
Yeah.
Okay. But that's what that was about, would be able to have a repeatable process. And so if you were to be trying to generate a GUID for all the records in a table, okay, that you're importing in,
yeah,
what that meant is that the key of that table is what I'd be passing in the function. So for every ID they had, here it comes in. And so ultimately, temporarily, in my process, I would always be adding this 32-digit GUID to all tables such that I can link them through.
Yeah.
Okay. Not that I kept with those necessarily. So with this company I worked for, it was called Clientele. You may have heard of it. we actually were using 32-bit or 32-digit string GUIDs as our keys in SQL Server. We did not use auto numbers. We actually always use these GUIDs like this with the funny characters off of it. And then that way it allowed us to link to tables. Then we had what was called a zero record in every table. So as if I had a company table and a division table, I'd have a GUID that represents the company and a GUID that represents the division. So if I have a division that doesn't exist as a company, he would have a 0 ID. But what was interesting was that meant we were always doing inner joins because there was always records to match to in every table. And so there was times it was actually faster than when you get a lot of data than having an outer join on the table when there isn't records in a given table.
Yeah.
Anyway, well, that's what I had for you, some handy little things.
Yeah.
Could you go back to that testing routine again? I'm not quite sure I followed all of that again.
Doc test. This again is something that Mike will has up on his site. Okay. And he just has this module that is nothing more than the code for being able to generate the test, where it actually goes through and literally on a given table or a given module looks for this, finds this, which is what it's supposed to be running, okay? And then this is what's supposed to be returned. So this fancy little module he put together really does look through running that function that I have in this module, passing in the value I want, and then this is what's returned.
Right.
So I think it's pretty cool.
When you codify the word insurance with those parameters, you expect to get back NSRNC.
Yep. Well,
sorry,
right.
I'm
INSUR, because I'm doing by default 5 characters, it looks like. No, it's a single word. Therefore, I take 5 characters as the rule.
Okay, but the next line down, it comes up with something completely different.
Right. So this one takes the first 5 characters and uppercases them, because remember I was saying by default I'm uppercasing. The next one, let's see, what are some of our rules here with our function? Let's look at those. My rules are the value we're going to pass in, and then optionally how many characters you want to do. It defaults to 5. What separator string do you want to use? I'm using spaces, but you could have data that you want to codify that's got semicolons between them. Okay. Which is what that's about. Whether you want to uppercase it or not, because as you can see, so if I didn't want to uppercase that, I would say false. And if I run this, now I get it as a lowercase.
Right.
Okay.
I'm just wondering what kind of rule is making it look so different, NSRNC, in the second time you run it. What would...
Let's see, true, true, true. So what do we say our rules was? First character is in. Let's go back here.
Yeah.
So the first rule that we're setting to true is the length of 5.
Yep.
Okay. The next one is the separator is a string, which is a space, which we're saying
is that the separator in the source? I guess.
Yes.
In the input variable.
What we're, because remember I'm pushing this into an array, and when you push into an array, you need to know what character you're separating on.
Okay.
Okay.
And so the space is a default? Is
yes.
It's optional? Okay.
Right. So just for the fun of it, let's do this one here. And let's go in here and separate everything with a colon. So for that,
you put a quote in the one back.
it probably wouldn't like that as input.
No.
All right, so we want to do 5 characters. That's the default separator string. And I'm going to put in here that it's a semicolon. Let's see if that's all I need to do. Still works.
Cool.
Gives me the same result as this did with it being the space separator.
Right.
Okay.
And again, the reason for making that optional is because, hey, maybe it's a comma separator file you get someone out of Excel.
Mm-hmm.
What are you going to separate on? Okay. Or maybe they use tabs in their separator.
Sure.
I wonder if that would work. Can I get away with putting the tab in there?
I doubt it.
I don't know if it really is a tab. I don't know. Can I get away with putting BB tab? Oh, look at that. Still worked. So there's a tab separated file and it worked. Now I don't think I might have got away with putting a
Phew.
that didn't work. So I tried putting a tab in there. Oh, and it still sees it as a space. Yeah, it's seeing it as space. So that's why the VB tab is seen as a tab.
Yeah.
But just pressing the tab key didn't work. It became a space.
Right.
All righty, that's all I got.
Well,
So can you put those that URL for Mike's thing in the chat?
yeah, I'll be happy to do that.
Which one do you want? The codify function that he did, or
No,
the testing?
Both of them, please.
That should be the first one.
Yeah.
Yeah, should give it to you.
That's good. Thank you.
Perfect.
Okay.
Excellent.
But you always want to watch Mike's site for interesting things.
Yeah. Very eclectic. Yeah. Okay, fantastic, Jack. I'm thinking I have an application where I won't go into details, but I'm thinking I need a way to codify words in longer strings. This does not guarantee unique codes, does it?
Yes, it actually does.
So there will only be one instance of, well, I see right there, no, yeah. If I ran it on the company name rather than the industry, though, that would generate a unique name, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Or unique code. Unique code.
But truly the way it does work is it only generates unique ones. And I don't remember how it does it. I just know it does.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, actually, I think the way you would do it is you would put it into a table with the codified field as unique,
Unique
Mhm.
index, yeah.
and then anytime it generated a non-unique, it would skip it.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So I have this rather convoluted and obscure routine that I will see if I can replace it with something a lot simpler.
Gotcha. And actually, I think this was done by nothing more than just running this table through it. And so it being the same, it wasn't an issue, because if it generated the same, that means they're similar. So
And I'm just looking at tobacco is
it's a simple
appearing-
word.
Yeah.
Right. So here's another one that's in the same industry. So
Yeah.
it generated the same code for both of them.
Yeah.
But that's because we're trying to group on industry.
Yeah.
Remember?
Right. Yeah. So that's, yeah.
Whereas if you were to do it on the company, hopefully those companies are uniquely named. Okay.
Yeah.
If they're not uniquely named, you would need to pass in more to it that gives you something that's unique to be identified with.
Yeah.
It's kind of like having John Smith.
Right. You're going to get
There's
a
lots
bunch.
of John Smith, so making a code on John Smith isn't going to work.
I
You
think
want it to be unique.
yeah, the data that I have that I'm thinking about is it has to be unique. So
Well, can you get away with the GUID?
not for what I need it for. No, I mean, I say it's kind of involved.
All right.
And maybe
You want to talk
that might
about it
be
offline sometime.
that might be a future presentation if I ever get it worked out correctly. If I ever get it worked out correctly, because I can see
Right.
where that would minimize one problem that I have. Yeah. Cool.
And just stepping back a bit, these aren't intended to be key fields, are they? They're just mainly for
lookup.
for ease of recognition.
Right. I mean, as an example, here's my data in this. Okay, that I want to take and get to a group. Well, I could go in here and I could do something like this and say filter on that. And here's all the Commerce banks.
Right.
Okay. But wouldn't it have been just as easy for me to take, and if I knew my data, to be able to pick, what is that, CS?
CB it was. CB.
CP.
What?
A peripheral, no, it was CB. There it is. And this would be knowing your customer data. You would already know that CB stands from that because you've been doing this a while.
But I guess in addition, it would also be a little bit tolerant of spelling mistakes, wouldn't it?
It can be.
If there was one M in commercial instead of two, it would still code to CB.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's where you get into, do you run spell check or don't you run spell check? Is it right or wrong? With the city of Portland revenue division that I have been working for, we had a huge issue every year as people are filing taxes, because they were allowed to not pick their address, but to enter an address.
Mm.
And so sometimes they might put the name of the street one way. The next time they do it all out. Okay.
Yeah.
And we had the issue then for one of our taxes that everybody agreed to, is that you had to be within a certain jurisdiction for you to pay the tax for art. And you could take and be on one side of the street and not be required to pay for it. But on the other side, you're supposed to be paying your $35 a year for the arts. And we literally, went through all kinds of routines with all the ways we had found people to enter addresses. to do seek and replace to get it as standardized as we can come up with, to then be able to do matching against the addresses we actually had for that person.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Couldn't you use something like Jeff's routines that he was using for mailings?
That's exactly what we were essentially doing.
Yeah, same thing. Yeah.
Okay. But you only get so close if the address isn't so close. Okay.
Yeah.
And we were trying to have a process where we were not manually going through and fixing addresses.
Yeah.
Okay. Because ultimately that's what Jeff Hollander had, was a mail order address cleaning business.
Yeah.
That, yes, he had his queries that he ran through that did just what I was talking about, to try to standardize what it looked like before he then sent it to an actual piece of code that actually does standardize it to what the postal office is looking for.
Mhm.
And so he was using a lot of sound decks and different things, trying to get things close to be able to have them when they're manually trying to do it. Because when you use a actual postal addressing system, it comes back saying this is a good address, or it says I don't know.
Yeah.
And it's the I don't know ones that he then had to manually have someone sit there on the screen in a data sheet going, this is the same as that, this is the same as that, this is the same as that.
Wow.
He was even doing it with names, in that it's always supposed to be the woman's name first, I think. I don't remember.
Can't remember either. We had
Then
him,
he had all those names that are gender neutral.
Yeah.
Now what do you do?
yeah.
Is that the wife that's got the gender neutral name, or is it the husband that's got the gender neutral?
Or if they both have gender neutral names, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we hired him once for a client of ours up here, and it was remarkable what he was able to accomplish with that. It wasn't cheap, but it did
Right.
the job that the guy was looking for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's too bad he wasn't able to really keep in business, because nobody mails anymore. And I've
Yeah.
always tried to point out to people, when it comes to an address is only good the last time you asked the person for their address.
Yep.
The minute you hung up the phone, the address is now suspect.
Okay. Well, thank you, Jack. That was really interesting. And like I say, I'm going to probably not tomorrow or even Saturday or Sunday, but sometime next week, I'm going to try this and see if I can clean up this data set that I have. And if it works out the way I expect, I might come back and do a follow-up.
Cool.
Show it.
And by the way, I did take and throw in a generic SoundX function in this app. That the purpose of SoundX is to take, and there's only certain characters that you really use. If you notice that it's not all 27 characters, all vowels are removed from a word to generate a string.
Yeah.
So can I do one as an example? Well, let's just do it with this. That's not what I wanted. Come on, copy this, paste. Wrong number of arguments, optional string. Sure looks like it ought to work. Oh, I guess I do have some parameters. So there's something that I literally could take and send in other names and come up with something very similar to this, such that it would sort similar names together. I think
what would
I can
happen if you change property to properties?
let's see, I was going to do it with a bunch of R's.
Oh, okay. Same.
So repeated characters it threw away. And that's still close enough because it throws away characters.
Yep.
Anyway.
Yeah.
But the idea is that if I had those names in the list, they're close enough for you now to be able to see, oh, hey, those are the same. The guy just spelled it wrong.
Yeah.
That's what SoundX is about.
Yeah.
It's trying to allow you to group things together to see it.
Yeah. Outstanding. So are there any other questions or comments or feedback?
And hopefully when you get this, you'll play around with this form, because I really had fun playing with this form as an extension, because I found that just exactly what does Access do? So what can I do here? Redmond. When someone takes and does this type of additional, this is the string that Access generates on filtering, which is why that if I now go in here and I do, and we'll do California, you can see this is how it starts doing it. Access is doing this automatically. This is built into Access. This allowing a person to do his own filtering. And as long as you use this kind of naming structure, which is the form name, the field that you're working with and what it is, all these little things start showing up automatically, saying that it's filtered on that field. See it?
Mm-hmm.
But I really want to understand, how does Access do it?
Is it rewriting the record source, or is it just applying a filter?
It's applying a filter.
So that control that you're showing up there in the top of the form, that's just grabbing the filter off the subform?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, yes, that's what it exactly is what it's doing.
Yeah.
That field is called label industry. That's a funny name that I came up with.
Yeah.
Anyway, we go to the code window. Caption null string, enable, and there's the form filter that we're working with.
Yeah.
Cool.
So, like I say, someone else was showing this, and I kept wondering, how does this work?
Oh.
How does filtering? Because I've always had a lot of trouble with form filtering, and therefore tended to never show a user that they can do filtering.
Yeah.
Because this is where people get in trouble with filtering, is right now there's this filter goes on, and they go, oh, I want to turn this off, clear the filter from industry. But again, it says just from industry, okay? Because the rest of that filter still exists.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm just sitting here thinking, you saw the problem we had that with the sort by and end up deleting. Yeah. I bet it's related. It's related to this. It's definitely related to the same phenomenon. Where,
this is where, I mean, you have the same problem happen when you take and close a form that you've had data populated and you do something and then you turn around and you look and you find out that things have been left behind in cells and so forth.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, well, yeah, you've got to filter.
And
Probably, yeah,
you know, and right now I should have a form filter in here.
on data,
And let's see.
Under data.
under data.
Yeah.
There it is.
And if you save it in that condition, it saves it with a filter.
Yes, it does.
Yes, it
Yeah.
does.
That's that gotcha that if you break your code too many times and end up saving, you can end up with your form that, oh, dang it, and you got to go in and clear all that stuff out to get it back to the normal position.
For it to actually work.
So, I don't know, does anyone else use a standard procedure of on the form open, you clear the filter?
I have.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because it comes to bite you all the time and
yeah,
accidentally change it.
Yes.
yeah. And I've learned that's the first thing I check when things don't work right is I flip it to data and see what filters and order by clauses are.
Right.
I noticed in the code too, you use temp vars.
Yes, I like temp vars because they persist.
Yeah,
Until
I've read that, but I've never implemented it. And you know, I got an app with a whole bunch of global variables, and whenever you stop the execution, you lose the variable.
Yeah.
You lost them, whereas the temp var is there all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that, see, was it you, George, that was showing an application that was you were showing your temp vars?
I use temp vars to filter cascading combo boxes. I actually have a sample demo on my website of doing that.
Yeah, and I went one step further with what you had done. See if I can bring it up. This was my version of it, okay? That I allow you to actually create a temp var on the fly. What type is it you want to do? Here's all these are all temp vars I've got built in to just to have them here. But I went with this whole idea of being able to edit, change the value. What is the data type of the temp var?
Oh, well.
Okay.
So you can drop this into an application and then
I wouldn't leave that one.
No, I would. I'm just thinking this is probably developer use only, right?
Well, but like I say, this is that thing where to have that ability to pop up a form.
Yeah.
Okay. Because right now, all right, those temp vars exist. So when I reopen this, they're still here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. If I close the app and reopen it, sorry, it's a pop-up form, therefore it keeps popping up on the other screen. As you can see, I have no temp vars when they're open. So as a developer in your app, to be able to pop this open and see it, which is what you were doing, George.
Right.
Okay. But here I am going, oh, I don't have a temp var. Let's put one in here. And what kind of variable is it going to be? Oh, I want it to be a date. And so let's put a date in here. Now I have a temp var in existence and I can be testing against it because it exists.
Right.
Okay. So that's what you were doing, George, was being able to go look at what ones were getting created when your form's open and so forth. Like I say, I went one step further.
Well, of course, you always go.
and I even gave the ability to duplicate it. Oh, what do we want now? I want one that is so it's still of the same date type. Okay,
Well,
and has the same value. But it's all nothing but playing with that code of how do you add a temp var? Where's my code? Other window again. And let's see, I have a form for that. This one here. And let's see, there's cancel. There's the data types. And I like to use this format for my temp vars when I add. I like tempvars.add because you can do it with semicolons, can't you, isn't it? Temp vars.
Yeah, yeah, there's another syntax. This is the one that I always use because I know it.
I like this because guess what the syntax for the delete is?
Delete.
Remove.
Remove.
Okay, so I'm using the same type syntax, dot. I like dot syntax.
Yeah. It's so I just pasted in the chat the link to my cascading combo using the same approach.
Yeah. Oh, and like I say, all I did is I saw your presentation. I went, hey, that's cool. I wonder if I can do that. Okay, I didn't.
Well, if I can do it, anybody can. See, if I can do it, anybody can do it.
All right.
Well, you pushed it.
Would you make that one available? That looked really handy.
Okay. And again, I would probably get rid of this button unless you actually in a given app wanted to be able to pre-populate a whole bunch of variables.
I see.
Because that's all this is.
Oh,
This is the code. It says, hey, add all these variables of this data types and so forth.
Yeah.
I didn't notice you clicking that button the first time through, and I wondered where they all came from.
Yes. That button pushes that code.
Right.
Okay.
That one.
Okay. Fantastic. Pretty cool.
Well, having a tool to manage those temp bars would take away a lot of the mystery of it. I've never used them, but I've read about it, and that persistence seems like a good thing.
Yeah.
Hey, and again, this idea of being able to, if you've got a certain number of temp bars globals that you want to set to begin with, you set them and they're there. Okay. Yeah. Your code can blow up and all kinds of things and debug and
what I like about one of the things I like about it is if you're filtering queries with a parameter that has a temp var, you can run that query whether the form is open or closed. Right. Whatever you set that temp var last, the value of a drop down, that query then will always open with that, even if the form itself that it came from isn't still open. So for testing, that's really handy because you can pop that query open at any point, and it's gonna.
Very cool.
Yeah. And it's not going to say missing parameter.
No, and there you go. There would be an example of using that doc testing, in that you could set a temp var, and then have it run a query and verify that it returned data.
Mm-hmm.
So you could even automate testing of queries.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well.
Very cool.
Is there any other discussions, questions, comments? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and talk a little bit about next month. I'm going to try something a little bit different. Linda, give me a reference.
Stop sharing. You want to keep recording, or you want to stop recording?
Well, I think I want this on the YouTube. Yeah.
All right.
So Linda sent this reference to this remote hosting company.
Oh, okay.
And technically they are a commercial vendor, so I was a little bit leery. But I got to thinking, based on what they're doing, this is something that comes up quite a bit. How do you move your Access databases to the cloud?
Huh.
And they're providing that as a service. So I thought, if we can keep the discussion to how this works as opposed to sign up to do it, please, it'll be worth that investment. So I asked him to come, and he's going to come in October. His name is Brian Crotine.
How are they doing it?
That's what I asked him to come and show us, how he's doing it. If we're going to get at least some insight into what the process involves. I think what they're doing is virtualizing, but that was really the motivation for asking him to come and talk to us, just to see if we can get a better understanding, insight of what might be involved. Again, as long as he doesn't try to sign everybody up that evening, we're in good shape.
What service was it? I don't remember.
You don't remember? I would have to look it up. I
use
don't
a
have.
couple. I use a couple. Go to assist.
No. They're
was
online
the-
hosting. They're online hosting.
It was. Let's see.
Oh, I should go look it up, shouldn't I?
Splashtop.
Well, I know they're sure making it difficult in that they're going to stop allowing you to install Access on servers.
Oh, yeah. Caspio is the name of the company. Yeah.
Casper?
Caspio.
Caspio. Huh.
Yeah.
Don't remember that.
Anyway, I just wanted to. Again, we'll find out what is involved to the extent that he's able to share that, and see if it's something that might be an alternative, because we're all being pushed in that direction one way or the other. Okay. Thanks again, Jack. I think we've got a couple of more presentations down the road based on that. We are back full time, so hopefully next month we'll get a few more people drifting in from summer vacation, and I'll see you all next time. Thanks.